Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Historical Sew Along series, where we'll take you through the ins and outs of some simple historical sewing projects to build up your wardrobe and your hand skills. Maybe even both at the same time. From prep work to finished product, we'll do it together, following step-by-step instructions with some tips and tricks sprinkled in along the way. This series is meant for all skill levels, but it is especially nice for beginners to build confidence while building a solid toolkit of techniques. With all of that said, feel free to pause, rewind, rewatch, and fast forward to whichever parts you need as many times as necessary. So let's get to the good stuff.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our historical sew along on bedgowns. Today in part 3, we will be finishing up our bedgown. Last time we sewed the sleeve extensions and the side seams together so that your bedgown will look a little bit like this. This week, we are going to be hemming all of the raw edges down the front and around the hem and back up the other side. And finally, we will put in our collar or neck piece here. So we're going to start our hem on the left side of the opening for the neck, and we are going to be turning it back 1/4 of an inch. We're going to baste all the way down the front, around the hem, and back up the other side. When you get to the side seams, you can decide on your bedgown if you want to just baste directly to the point and then continue to baste from there, or if you want to fold up a little bit. You don't want it to turn up too much, but if you've got your 1/4 inch basted back here and on the other side, you can just slightly curve that point as you see here. It's not a dramatic curve. After you finish basting the front openings and the bottom hem, we are ready to start hemming, but you don't want to start right up at the neck. We're going to save that part for when we put the collar in. You can take your pattern and line it up with the edge of the front of your bedgown, and somewhere below this point, mine is teal, comes in here, I'm going to put a pin in right about there so I know that that's where I probably will eventually want this fabric to fold back. From this point where I put the pin in, I'm going to go another inch or 2 down, and that's where I'm going to start hemming. And we're going to keep hemming this all the way around until we get to this same point on the other side of the opening of the bedgown. So make sure that you go ahead and mark the same distance down from the neck to here on the other side so that you don't discover that you've sewn all the way up to here, because you'll need to take that out. All right, now that you've finished basting and hemming all the open edges, let's move on to the best part of the whole bedgown, the neck. All right, so the first thing we're going to do with our collar is turn back all of the edges 1/4 of an inch and baste them in place. All right, so now that we've finished basting back the raw edges, we're going to fold it in half lengthwise and finger press along the folds. So these corners of your neck match up with the C points on your pattern. And what you do need to mark on your collar is the center line, and that's point B. But just mark it in the back. You don't have to do it on both sides. And I'm just going to put a pin in here and going to set the pattern away. All right, and then taking the pattern of the body, laying it, matching your E point up with your cut here, you can see that this point here is the center of your back, so you can put a pin in there. And what's going to happen is that your point B here and your point C here are going to match up. And to show that on the garment, here's B, and C is just a little bit beyond the opening here. This will make more sense when we start to pin it all together. All right, so we are going to line up the center point of the neck with the center point of the back, 1/4 of an inch overlapped, and put a pin in. And then we can pin down to the far end. And your point that you're going to is just beyond the opening here. And you can't keep that 1/4 of an inch overlap exact or it won't make it. You have to cheat this angle a little bit. And do the same thing on the other corner. Take it down just a little bit past the opening. And the rest of it should fit in. These areas on the bedgown always look a little odd when you're doing this part here. So don't worry if it's wrinkled and it's bunching. As long as you're getting past that opening, you'll be fine. All right, so before we deal with any of this trying to fit into this, we are going to go to the fold of your collar and overlap and put a pin in. And do that on the other side. All right, now we're going to stitch from the fold here on the collar around the points up to that fold again. So let's do that. You're going to want to make sure that you've smoothed out this fabric of the body of the bedgown as you are stitching around the corner. All right, so this is the moment of truth of whether you made all these match up. I was able to get to that far corner with my stitching and not just with the pinning. But if you discover when you get to this point that somehow you're an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch off, it's okay to slide another piece of fabric in there and just piece this part. If you want to cut a whole new piece, you can, but it's much more authentic to the 18th century for it to be pieced. Having a brief moment of wishing I matched my stripes up a bit better. I'm trying not to let it bother me that these stripes in the collar are like an 1/8 of an inch off the stripes in the body. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to keep telling myself it really doesn't matter. If anyone's close enough to notice, they're too close. All right, when you reach the point that you've gotten to the fold in the collar, you want to stop your stitching. You can leave your thread and your needle in because what we're going to do at this point is flip it over to the other side. All right, at this point you can see that we've got half of the collar stitched in. So we are going to fold the other half of the collar to cover the raw edge of the back of the neckline and put a pin into place. We can now deal with these front pieces of the bedgown. Starting at the point that you have pinned down here, you can fold all of this back to just at this point where the collar folds. Depending on your fabric, you may be able to ease some of this up further, but you don't want to stress it so that it doesn't pucker. So what do we do here? It doesn't quite match up. That's totally fine. It's not meant to. We're going to fold the raw edge under here, put in a pin, and then we can put in a pin in the collar to this point. And pin the rest of the way down. And let's do the same thing on the other side. So now that you have the front edges folded back and the collar pinned in, we are going to hem stitch up the front edge, around the collar, and back down to meet up with your hemming, and then we'll be done. And we are bringing the neckline now into the front hem, and we are done with our bedgown. All right, so before we try it on, make sure you take all your basting out, and then we can slip it on. And here we go. This is my favorite part. We have our bedgown completed. If you want to roll your cuffs up, you can, or you can leave them down, and you're ready to put on your apron and get to work. Woohoo! Thank you for joining us for part 3 of our 3-part sew-along on making this bedgown. We appreciate any of your suggestions, questions, and feedback that you can leave in the comments below. Happy sewing! Click here to subscribe to our channel.